Hello, welcome back to Return on Character podcast, where I get to meet and interview famous and should be famous people who think character matters in the world. Today, I have the great honor to be with Asma Paigeer from Afghanistan. Hello, nice to see
Hello.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me in your show.
For those that can't see, she is Heather's in a room. It looks like it's a university. Are you in a university setting right now, or where are you?
Yes, I am. I'm right now in Virginia Tech.
You're at Virginia Tech.
Yes,
Okay. And you told me before we started you are 19 years old, correct?
yes,
And you are from Afghanistan.
yeah, absolutely true.
Well, listeners, what's kind of exciting is how does a 19-year-old Afghan woman end up at Virginia Tech, and so busy that she can barely find moments break away to have a conversation with us. We're very lucky, but Hazama, I want to hear your story of how you ended up at Virginia Tech today. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about your Afghan background and your heritage, your family, and all those good things.
First of all, thank you for having me again in your show. It's such an honor to be your guest. And thanks to everyone who is watching or listening to this interview. It's a very interesting question. For me, it was a very long journey to make it from Afghanistan to Virginia Tech. Even I myself have sometimes difficulties believing that I made it. So, just 2 years ago, I was in Afghanistan when the government collapsed and when everything with like when chaos happened last year. So, in the all chaos, I was there, and it was quite of an experience, I would say now.
So, what part of the of Afghanistan did you grow up in, and did you have any brothers and sisters?
Yes, I do have siblings, and we are Hazaras. And if you're familiar with your like the ethnic minorities back in Afghanistan, so we all grew up in Kabul, like mostly grew up in Kabul, and we prior to the fall of Afghanistan down, we had some challenges in Afghanistan on the way how the government was treating the Hazara people or the Hazara minorities. But if we compare it today versus that time, I would say that time was such a privilege because all we have to do is like to advocate for our rights and then argue for something that's in our favor, like that's something that's equal, equity, and fairness. But right now, that's not even the case. Because if you watched the news last year in August, the Taliban seized the power in Afghanistan. And again, the history of Afghanistan once again fall in a dark chapter, and the Taliban are mastering these Hazara people, these Hazara students at every opportunity that they are getting, like bombing these schools that are like educating the women, the girls, they're like targeting them, and they're always targeting like the the locations that are like Hazara dominated. So like my race of people, my ethnicity of people are in a very bad kind of circumstances. And it is sad to know that there is no one left in Afghanistan to talk about their rights. There is no United Nations. There is no constitutions. There is nothing, and there is no free media left in Afghanistan to even to cover this masters, this brutality. That's a lot of challenges that we are facing in Afghanistan.
My mentor, Joe Ritchie, as a young man, grew up in Afghanistan. He spent 4 years of his youth there, and he had a Hazara servant in his with his family growing up, and to this day, he holds that gentleman up as one of the greatest men he ever knew, as almost angelic in his way of being. as I understood it, the Hazaras were traditionally servants of the, and I could be wrong here, of the kings and queens or the kings of Afghanistan, and have a great disposition of kindness. And the recent massacres that have been happening, perpetrated specifically on the Hazara and women, right? Girls. There was a bombing recently.
The details are really heartbreaking. I swear I couldn't get to the bottom line of the news that I was reading it about. I it's so heartbroken, and the number of the girls that is being killed or murdered, and the number of girls that is being disabled as new today, exclusion, and then the lack of support that they are receiving. They are not getting enough medical assistance that they need. So some of them has a higher chance of survival, but because there is no hospital that provides them the needs they have, like medical needs they have, they will end up being dying. So that's really sad news. And those who are like even surviving, or they're really like medically good, maybe physically, but not psychologically, not mentally. So it's very difficult to sit in a classroom and then there's an explosion. All of your classmates dead and you are the only one who survived. So I do feel how that is the survival kind of guilt, how they're feeling bad about being the only one who survived when all of their friends are gone. So
Do you have some survivor guilt yourself? Can you tell us your story? How you got out of Afghanistan?
as I mentioned, it's been a long journey for me to make it into the United States. Uh, to give you a few backgrounds, my father worked for U.S. government and U.S. forces over a decade, and then when then when the former Afghan government or Afghanistan government collapsed and the power with the Taliban seized the power, it was difficult for me, for my family to live in Afghanistan because the Taliban start executing whoever worked with the U.S. forces, with the U.S. government, like target killing. Um, and we knew we have to like escape our house because there's no way that we can survive in Afghanistan. So we we go to the airport and try to escape through the airport. The airport was the only leave Afghanistan. All other
Mhm.
places were closed. The borders were closed. They were all under control of the Taliban. And if some of you may notice or see in in the news, outside the Kabul airport was a chaos. There was a crowds of people. Everyone was fighting for their lives. Everyone was trying to get into airport and then uh, leave the country. And then on that chaos, I kind of get separated from my parents, from my family, because it was so crowded. People were like pushing, pulling one another, and there were like a massive amount of people. At one point, I had this feeling that I do have lack of oxygen. I cannot breathe, so I had to like make my way out of the crowd so I can survive, like I can breathe. And then when I look back, I realized that I cannot see my parents. It took me hours to wandering around looking for a familiar face, looking for my parents, for my family, but there was no track of it. There was thousands of people. Even
And you were
many.
17 or 16
uh,
roughly at this time?
I was 18 at
18, okay.
best, and then it was heartbroken, and I thought that I'm not gonna see my parents ever again, and then there was no way that I can contact with my parents or my family because we all left our house and escaped, and soon after that, our house, our car, everything were like being seized by the Taliban. They were like in search of our house for my father, and then they couldn't, but they, they take it away everything. So we weren't having a specific locations so that we can go on back to some same location and find one another. because my father said that we have to like constantly changing our locations for the rest of our life, as long as we are staying in Afghanistan. And it was difficult because they also destroyed their phones because they don't want to be like tracked by the Taliban. And at that point, we had no idea what kind of technologies the Taliban are using. As I mentioned, it was the collapse of Afghanistan government was a shock for all of us. We did not anticipate that would have happened. It was so quickly, so sudden happened. Fear like was dominating every aspect of your life. You didn't know if they're like listening to the phone calls, they're tracking the WhatsApp messages, what they are doing, how they did it. Like it was still the questions that everyone asking it. So, and I had this no way of contacting my parents, and then I received a text message from my colleagues from Asian University for Women. We were all students in Bangladesh, but because of COVID started and the COVID lockdown, if anyone is familiar with. So we forced to go back in Afghanistan and attempt to study online. But some of us has difficulties studying online because in Afghanistan we had lack of electricity because the Taliban were constantly sabotaging the power facility, and we did not have access to a stable internet connection. So without those two components, it was very difficult to continue your studies online. But somehow our university was organizing these buses, 7 buses, to take us to the airport and then eventually uh, leave the Kabul airport in a charter flight.
So, as I understand it, you were in Bangladesh with a group of Afghan students during
Yeah.
COVID. You were shipped kind of back into America, into Afghanistan to do remote studying. How many girls were there total in the that were moved back to Afghanistan from Bangladesh?
In the beginning, it was around 180 students.
180. Okay.
Yes.
And then did your parents ever get into the air base? Was your father successful in getting help? What happened to them? Then we'll go back to the girls.
Yes, I'm so grateful for everyone who helped my parents, my family, especially to Mark Yuan organizations. They were really generous and kind in helping individuals like my father that been left behind. Um, so my father did not get to the Kabul airport and did not leave through Kabul here. They leave Afghanistan later through a charter flight from another province because it was a really chaos and to get into the Kabul airport and almost impossible because every gates to the Kabul airport was being guarded by the Taliban. It was under Taliban control. So unless they want it, you cannot leave the gates. Yeah, it was.
So,
I
Azama, your parents were trying to get out their own way. You were with your students from, from Bangladesh. So that when you Afghan women that went to Bangladesh came back to Afghanistan, you're stuck in Kabul. You can't get in to the airport. You about have roughly 180 students, and the Bangladesh group was organizing a way to get you guys out. Uh, is that correct? Tell us what happened. How did that come to be?
Yeah, the initial plan was like we get into the Kabul airport and then leave the Kabul airport through a charter flight that was organized. But the problem was we did not manage to get in the Kabul airport in time, meantime. Like we tried several times over a course of 7 to 8 days. Like we every attempt that we had lasted like 24 hours, 6 hours, and we were in these passes. We did not have to food to eat or water to drink or even to use the restrooms. So those are like the really essential things that it's difficult to survive with. But every attempt lasts longer than we anticipated. And we did not manage to pass the gates because all of those gates were controlled by the Taliban. And they were like not allowing us to leave or cross the gates to get into Kabul airport. They threatened us if they ever saw us. They were like shoot us out. They shoot us without mercy. They threatened us multiple times. They beat our driver, the bus driver. They they fire shots at the buses. They did everything. Uh, in conclusion, to create fear, to discourage us to leaving Afghans. But whoever gets into those buses, we all were clear that there's no future left in Afghanistan for us. So it was either we gonna die or we gonna leave. But the both case scenario was far better than living under the Taliban rule or under the Taliban down. So we persistently going to the Kabul airport once they were like forcing us to leave one gate. We would have like circling around the airport trying to get from another gate.
How
And
many
it was
buses were circling around?
7 buses.
So 7 buses had to coordinate driving together to various different locations.
Yes,
that that in itself is very chaotic, and they're all full of women. Is that correct?
absolutely. They were like full of women and they're all full of like um, 17 to 23, 25 years old, like maximum. This was like the range of ages that we were in. So we all are like young women, in other words. So it was difficult. And the last time that we tried to leave the Kabul through the Kabul airport, I remember that the Taliban let us to pass the first gate, and we were happy that we can get into Kabul airport. But they did not let us to pass another gate. And one thing to mention, there was not one gate; there were like several gates that were all being controlled by it. So basically, they let us to go through past the one gate, first gate, and then we stuck between the two gates of the Taliban. And then they keep us there for like few hours. I was getting 1 a.m. in the morning, and I was starting feeling uncomfortable because it's not seems okay that keep us there. And then I could have seen from the window the bus and all other cars, all other buses, they're all like being forced to leave the area. Even those buses that have foreign nationals, like not the Afghans, but the foreign nationals from, for example, European country or Americans, right? Um, they were like all being denied. They were being all they were the Taliban were forcing them to leave the area. But for our case, they just kept all of our 7 buses in a row between two of their gates, and it it was 1 a.m. that they start forcing civilians people to leave the area as well, like the individuals that were like hanging around. They start forcing everyone to leave, and I get more uncomfortable because something was my consciousness was keep telling me that something is not right. I think like they were planning to do something, and they want no witness to be left behind. And to give you a quick story, when I was growing up in Afghanistan, we had this history class, and we had this history subject that we were reading in our textbooks. And in the Taliban, during the Taliban first regime, or the first time that they seized the power, there were many cases, many histories that a group of people gone missing, a group of village gone missing. Like, they murdered everyone. They seized everyone. Their families, their relatives, their friends never knew that whether they're alive, whether they're dead, what happened to them, where they are. So that was the
That
last
was
thing.
going through your head as
Yeah,
this was
that was like
happening.
going through my head, and I was like, I'm not up to this kind of consequences. And then I start texting my sister. Her name is Ozada. She is my personal hero. I am truly loving her. She is she is a savior to me. She was in Nebraska, and she was studying a master's degree in the University of Nebraska at Omaha at that time. And then I contacted her because she was the only one who I left who I had the contact or I was in contact with. I texted her and I said like, okay, this is what is happening and this is going to be the last text message that you'll receive from me. And she's like, hold on, I'm gonna go find help. I was like, oh my God. I did not believe anyone is capable of helping us at that moment. I was absolutely giving it up on it. I was like, this is like the last text message. This is probably last few minutes of my life. She at least can stay on text message with me and say like, okay, I have a hit this day, stuff like that. But we all know that for young women in a war situation, in a conflict, the last or the best case scenario is that they are being shot and they are being dead. At least that's dead with the honor. But there are far worse case scenarios that could have happened to women like us. Like we could have been raped by the Taliban. I still don't know. They might have planned it to do. We might have like been sexually harassed by the Taliban or been forced to marry the Taliban soldiers. So those are like the worst case scenarios that could have happened. Like a part that they could tell us, telling us was far better than all of the other tea that I mentioned to you. So and then she texted me and said, like, "Look, my father friends wants to help you," and I was like, "What?" I did not know, but as I mentioned, my father worked with the U.S. forces for a very long time, and he had a lot of friends from U.S. forces that were like some of them still active working with the U.S. forces, some of them like retired. But the bond, the brotherhood, the friendship was very strong. Then when my sister approaches them and said, "Well, my sister and her friends are at the gates of Kabul. If you don't help, there's no one else to help." And they all immediately responded to the call to my sister and they immediately get into connection and they tried their best, the all forces, the all resources they had to help us. And after this day, I'm very grateful to every single one of them for for the bravery, for everything that they did for me and for my friends. Because of them, we made it to United States. So
But what ended up happening? How did how'd you get from the no person or the Taliban zone into the airport? What happened?
yeah, um, it's when they contacted me, my father friends, uh, they asked me to send them some information, like live locations, some pictures, and a list of they asked me a list of information, and at that time I wasn't sure if I can provide every single piece of information they asked for, and it was quite challenging and uh, risky
And
because
you were doing this while you were sitting in the bus, waiting,
yes,
right? At
yeah,
in the middle of the night, right?
yeah, it was
And the
funny.
Taliban were around you, and you didn't know what was going on. And you sent the information. What ended up? What they do with the information? How did you get out of this situation? And how did you? How are 7 buses of women saved and put into the Kabul airport?
Uh, I have to say that it was difficult because we were like advised to not use our cell phones, not to communicate with anyone because of security risks. If the Taliban catch us, they will like do bad stuff to us. Like the best case scenario, they would have killed us. And at that time, I had these feelings in me that do I really want to take the risk? But then I managed my fear and I said like, someone has to do something. Like we are almost at the end of the story, so it's either do or die kind of situation. And I said like, even if I die, at least I fight for it. So I sent information, I take some pictures. I still remember why I was shaking when I was taking those pictures from surrounding to kind of create a situational awareness. And then I send it to all those information. So I did not know what they did to that information until I made it to United States and I met all of them in person. And then they say that how every single one of them worked so hard, and then it was not one person particularly, but it was the group work. It was a teamwork. And it was a chain of teamwork. So everyone participated, everyone did it. Crucial part, that information that we are being saved. When I send them information, they send it to another organizations, and that organization send it to another individual, and then that individual finally send it to Ministry of Defense, and then someone else contacted the Ministry of Defense and saying like, okay, this is an emergency situation. These guys need help. That is the last moments of their life, and we need to support them. So finally, the information is being transferred to someone who was in charge of making decisions and DOD. And then that that person released the decision, and we are being saved. Up to now, up till they, we don't know the terms of negotiation between the United States government and the Taliban.
So they
They,
had to negotiate your release.
I guess, yes,
Hmm.
it should have, because the Taliban was not letting us to pass it under any other circumstances. And one thing to remind you, it was the day after the Kabul airport explosion,
Right.
uh, the explosion that caused the death of like massive civilians and also like around 13 U.S. servicemen and women, the soldiers that they died in Kabul airport. So our day was like our releasing or escaping day was the day after that
The day
explosion.
after. So
So
people
yeah,
were on edge.
and a lot of things were like really sensitive.
Hmm.
And one thing else to remind you, like the U.S. forces were in the Kabul airport. They were like ready to evacuate people who worked with the U.S. government, United States government. And the problem was no one was showing up. And they were thinking that maybe these people are facing fear that not showing up. But the reality was different. Gates were being controlled by the Taliban, and the Taliban was not allowing anyone to get and pass the
I
gates and
see.
get in Kabul airport. And they would have said, okay, we don't have problem. No one is showing up to leave the Afghans. So it was a
Uh,
kind of miscommunications, stuff like that. But that's,
Tell me about the moment whenever, what was it in the morning? When did you finally get released? When did the buses start to move? And what was the reaction like in the bus?
I cannot describe the feelings. I don't know. We were scared. We were frustrated. We were like, we did not had sleep for a long time, so we were not we were not quite sure that we are being safe because the buses were start moving and we don't know what they're gonna do.
Right.
And to mention this, we were right in front of like the Ministry of Interior that was turned into the biggest Taliban camp, like biggest military camp for a Taliban soldier. Like our buses were right in front of their biggest military camp, and we were not sure what's going to happen. Either we are going to be saved or we're going to go face some consequences that we never think about. We all know that what the Taliban are capable of doing it. The violence, the brutality, especially towards women, are indescribable. And then, but we eventually made it to Kabul airport. So it was still disbelief, but we were kind of happy, or I would not say happy, but I would say positive. We became more positive. We became more hopeful that we are going to have a future and we're going to survive this. But but before they letting us to get to pass the final gate, they take away everything we had from us, like our bags, our laptops, and everything. The only thing they let us to carry was our passports. And then the biggest challenge was that they take away the three of my friends, uh, taking as a hostage, like bribing them, and then say like bringing some unacceptable excuses, like their names are misspelled in the list that we receive, their passports number, or in. We knew that those informations are not acceptable and not logical. And then they take away and they say like, we're not letting this three girl to go and join you. And the other girls that were in my team, like the other 150 students, they were all happy. about the outcome, about that they were being saved. And at that moment, I was not ready to leave those triggers behind because I knew for sure, for 100% sure that anything that could have happened to our entire group this time, it's gonna happen to them, three girls.
Mhm.
And to be honest, getting on those buses, trying to leave Afghanistan, I kind of like getting separated from my family. I couldn't do anything for my family. I didn't even know where my family is, how they were doing. So I wasn't yet ready to leave these girls behind. As soon as I get into the Kabul airport, I start asking around the soldiers, who is the captain, who is the commander, who is in charge in here, and then they show me the captain, and I had to like talk this conversation with this captain, and I had to kind of have to convince him that he needs to do something. He needs to still go and save those three girls, and then he said he cannot do anything unless he received the order from the DoD, the Ministry of Defense in the United States, and then that's how my
Mhm.
father once again came into the play, and what they did for the entire group this time, they did it for these three girls, and then the same piece of information carried out, the same chain of command, and then finally someone released the decisions that those three girls needed to be saved, and this captain go and take the girls from the Taliban. And hours later, those girls rejoined us in the Kabul airport. I'm
Brilliant.
so grateful for everyone who had this. I know that they don't know who I am or who any one of us was or were, but they helped us because they believe that we are human and we are worth saving. So I'm really grateful for their courage and their desire in putting themselves in a positions to help. So I'm really grateful.
So, of all the girls that got into the airport, you were the only one that fought for those last three girls.
It was kind of the case scenario.
Active character and courage. That's incredible. So, you're tell me about the feeling when the plane lifted off the runway in Kabul and left Afghanistan. What was that like for you guys?
I will not talk about on behalf of my entire friends because I don't know how about their feelings.
Hmm.
But among our group, I was the last one who was getting into the airport, into the airplane. And last few steps that I was taking towards the airplane, I was this feelings that something is holding me back in Afghanistan. And that thing was my family. And I don't know what happened to them, where they are, what's gonna happen to them. And I was keep feeling like I'm selfish. I'm gonna leave this place. I might never be able to see my parents. I might never be able to find my family and not be able to talk to them. What will happen if the Taliban find my parents, my family? What will they do to them? And I was feeling I have this fight with my consciousness, and some part of me would have said like I should get into the airplane and leave Afghanistan. Think about future, think about positive things that will happen in our life, and then someone has to survive so that he can narrow the story to other people. So I was bringing reasons for myself to get on the airplane and leave, justifying my decision. But in my heart, I still like feel like I made a very selfish decision. I still quite am unsatisfied with the decision I made because I left part of myself in Afghanistan when I get onto the airplane. And that's why at the beginning, I mentioned to you, I was like, I had the survival gear, had that guilt for a long time. And although my parents are right now and my family are they're safe, they are in United States, it's still it's so difficult to get along with it to move forward,
Yeah.
as I mentioned to you, because you you would still like remind yourself it's been a selfish decisions to leave those who you love the most behind. So I think
Yeah.
that was the most difficult decision I made in my life.
Well, I have no doubt your parents are proud of your decision, and that's what they would have wanted as well. And so you made the right decision. Should not feel bad. But thank you for sharing that. That's that's an incredible thing to go through. I'm happy to hear your family's okay. Do you get to see them very often, or?
Uh, I haven't managed to see him quite often. Since they moved to United States, I only visited them once, and it was a few hours. I'm so looking forward to meeting him at the end of my semester and spend time with them.
Where are they located? Where? Tell me about where every one of your family is in America today.
Um,
You're at Virginia Tech.
yes, I'm in
Uh,
Virginia Tech. I'm in University of Virginia. My
mhm,
sister also there, my personal hero. She is also in Virginia. She is in Northern Virginia. We're like 5 hours away. And then my parents and my younger brother, they're in Pennsylvania, the state
mhm.
of Pennsylvania.
Okay. All right. Well, tell me about what you're doing today, and what do you care about most today, and how can we help you and the things that you want to see happen in Afghanistan and for the Afghan people.
Uh, Thank you for asking these questions. Well, I'm right now studying fintech and big data analytics. It's like financial technology and data analytics. I'm doing also a minor in computer science, and I'm so looking forward to increase my knowledge and skills in artificial intelligence because of what I have this vision of building, developing modern financial system post Taliban Afghans. And the reason why I'm doing this is the way I left Afghanistan, the way I was forced to leave Afghanistan was brutal and unacceptable. And one of the reasons how the Taliban managed to do this, like managed to seize the power and overthrow the democratic government, was they had this this advantage of using this Hawala system. You're familiar with Hawala is like based on trust. It existed since like 8th century. It is the very old method of it's one part of one piece of like financial system, but it is a crucial piece for countries like Afghanistan. Because through this Hawala system, they're like transferring the money from outside the country to inside the country and then distributing it among their militia. And there is no way for the government to track the movement of the money, the flow in or flow out of the money, or how the money is being in or how money in circulation or being used in an economy. So it was how they gradually seize the power, gradually uh, increase their own power and influence.
Is this an
It,
electronic system that they're using, or
no,
is it a cultural exchange? Tell us, explain a little bit more how it works.
well, Hawala is what's happening in the Hawala system is there's two persons, like person A and person B, and then if you want to transfer money from outside to inside the country, what you do is you go to the person A and you give your money to the person A and you say like, I want my money to go to the other country that the person B is located. And I want my family, friends, or someone you mentioned someone name, he or she pick up the money. And then you see there are no physical flow of money that they can like track it down. So it's kind of based on trust. You trust this person, you give your money, and then the other person on the other country give the money from their own pocket to that person. So it's kind of trust
Hmm.
that you do. it's for Taliban, for terrorist group, it's the best method that they can use to move their monies. And for civilian people, for common people, for normal people, it's been a struggle because they are being scammed many times because this system is very corrupted. Uh, there are being a lot of fraud that they go and trust their money, their little savings to these people and try to send their money to another country to their children who is trying to get an education or working or doing other stuff and they cannot do it because the person taking your money and the next day then you go, you cannot find that person on that locations and the money and the person is gone.
So this has inspired you to do what you're doing today, what you want to do. But tell us about that.
I think I'm so motivated to do this thing because I believe if managed to develop a modern financial system, especially using artificial intelligence, we can hit or we can build a system that is more resilient, transparent, and most important, it will be on the control of the government, not a corrupted government, not the government of the Taliban, a democratic government for after like the Taliban, like post-Taliban government. Like it will be something that people will have access to it. And then they can have their money transferred, they can have their better financial system, like better flow and management of the money. So they're not being corrupted, they're not going to face a lot of struggles. And the good thing is that it's auditable, taxable, and and the government can understand that okay, if a huge amount of money getting into the country or getting out of the country, they can like investigate, they can ask about it, what's going on. So to ensure that terrorist groups like the Taliban will never be able to grow power through illegal money. And also the Hawala system is the main the main financial method that is being used by human trafficker, sex trafficker, labor trafficker, and money laundering. So it's essentially the center for all kind of corruptions and crimes. So this new system will replace the old system, and eventually it will stop the practice of illegal transfer or illegal usage of money. And then as soon as you have like something stable in the market, I believe that it will leads to establishment of the stock market in Afghanistan, invest start by investment in Afghanistan because we have the control of money and we have the control of money in Afghanistan. So people, the
Hmm.
government system, and they will not investing in outside country just like right now that they are doing, or in past 20 years that they were doing. They would rather be inspired to invest in Afghanistan. And then economic over time will grow. And then the economy, we have a better economy, we have a better standard of life for human, for people of Afghanistan. So I think at the end, everyone will be better off and everyone will have a better uh, life. And that's what I'm inspired. That's why I'm like trying so hard to do this.
What year are you in school
That's,
today?
I'm freshman right now. Yeah.
You're a freshman.
Yeah, I changed
Um,
my major to fintech. Yeah. And I forgot.
have you been able to keep in touch with any of the people or girls that were in the bus with you and where they ended up in the world?
Yes, um, I'm, I was in touch with few of them, but then I'm in touch with one of them in a regular basis. They're all doing good. I think they're enjoying their life,
Yeah.
freedom, that this amazing opportunity that is being given to us. Like we all made it to United States, and right now I believe all over the United States, like all states. So a
Yeah.
few of them go to different states, and we are like even in connections. And I think everyone is enjoying their life. They're happy that they are being safe and they're in a safe country and a country that women are not mistreated the way we were
Yeah.
being treated in Afghanistan or under the Taliban government. And then there is they have as far as I know, they are all being in school in universities across the United States. So they are continuing to complete their educations. So that's a very positive and good news. And I'm so happy about that happen.
What was it? What was some of the m- more surprising aspects coming to America for you when you first came? Because you'd never been outside of, am I right? Outside of Afghanistan prior
I was in
to
Bangladesh.
you were in Bangladesh, correct? Yeah, tell me a little bit about what it was like to come to America, and then something that you think that us Americans take for granted that is so abundantly obvious to you that maybe wouldn't be obvious to us because we live here.
I came entirely from a different culture, and the culture in Afghanistan is different. The entirely the Asian culture and the South Asia culture was was completely different than United States culture. So it's kind of challenging and it's kind of sometimes interesting
Mhm.
and to see the differences. And then, first of all, I still have like difficulties with the language.
You do remarkably well. I mean, it's quite extraordinary. I'm assuming you learned English in Afghanistan.
Well, we right now speaking a formal English, but when I'm trying to hang out with my friends and classmates, they all like grow up in the United States. They using this shortcut, just using this strange vocabulary, and I have to like pay more attention to it than what they're trying to
Yeah.
say. So that's quite a challenge. And meantime, very interesting. And the way I'm seeing that they're approaching to topics, to problems, to challenges. So that's kind of a journey. And then yes, I do like the American pie. I absolutely like it. We never had it in Afghanistan or in other
The America what?
pie.
Pie. Oh, the pie.
The dessert.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you get a lot of that during Thanksgiving. This is we're coming up to Thanksgiving. Do you have any plans for Thanksgiving? Are you going to be with Al and his family, or
No, I plan to stay in dorm with my roommate. She is also an international student. So yeah, we're planning to explore Blacksburg more,
yeah?
drink the bridge. That's gonna be fun.
How else can uh, um, how else can people help you and other Afghan women in America today? Is there anything that comes to mind that we can do to help make your transition and make you successful?
For everyone who is listening to this part of the interview, I really, first of all, I thank them for their time, for giving up and listening to this interview. And if you ever want to do something for Afghan women, the least anyone can do is to advocate for them. Like to
Mm,
send a small text message in your social media, just post it and just share this news about the Afghan women. Because right now, all the Afghan women are being abandoned, being ignored, uh, by a lot of organizations around the world. So no one is caring about them. No one is caring about their stories or what's happening to them today in Afghanistan. So if any one of you can do to share this news about the Afghan women, about that they are also humans and also they are worthy to receive educations and they are entitled to have free life, that would be the greatest help that anyone can do in sharing this news. And as far as helping other women, if you know the Talibans are closing the schools, the universities to women, they are not allowed to work or study. So if you're in touch or in connection with any Afghan woman that's still in Afghanistan, and for any possible way, if you can mentor her or you can share some resources with her that she can study, she can continue her study in an informal way, that would be a great help because we are trying to educate these women that are all being abandoned, are being ignored by the system. So that would be very helpful. And for me, as always, I'm still trying to raise enough funds for my ongoing education in Virginia Tech. And if you're willing, you're always welcome to donate towards my fund.
How do people get in contact with you, Asma?
I'm actively on LinkedIn, so that's the best way that anyone can contact me. But I also have a website that a lot of information about me is available on the website. They can visit the website, and there is a contact information provided, and they can get in touch at any time they want.
Well, thank you so much for being a guest on the Return on Character podcast. We really appreciate it. And, it's people like you that make the world a better place, and we're thrilled to have you um, and to know you. And I'm a big fan of Asma in Afghanistan, and my heart's broken as to the way things went at the end. And Afghanistan is oftentimes forgotten. It's in the center of the world and then forgotten, and then it's in the center of the world. My hope is that we do not forget about Afghanistan. And so, thank you again for being on the show, and everybody support Asma as much as you can.
Thank you. Thank you for having me in your show, and thank you all. Thank you for everyone who is listening. And it's Asma, like Asma dot asmapaigeer.com, like my first name, last name.com. If
Okay,
that
yeah, ASMA, and then Peggy is PAIGEER.com.
G.
Is it
It's with G.
P PAIGEER, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.